Now, the first thing is this who I am. We already know that. And I want to give opportunities today. The point is this: if you, some of you might be in your 100, in your 500 level, 400 level, 300 level, depending. But you want to look at something. At the point of your graduation, what should be the next thing for you? And usually, when I talk about scholarships, I try to remind people of the fact that education in most of the developed countries is really very expensive. But what we want to do today is to discuss the best practices on how you can go from your own country. All of us here, or most of us here, are from Nigeria. Go from your own country and move abroad for further studies. You could go to Germany, you could go to France, you could go to the United States, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, Italy, just any of those places. But you don't want to pay fees. You don't want to pay tuition. You don't want to come to the UK, for instance, and pay 20-something thousand pounds to a school just for a master's degree. Because 20,000 pounds at the moment is almost 40 million naira, which is a whole lot of money. So how do you move from studying in Nigeria to not paying fees for your studies abroad? That is what is called scholarships. Now, I want us to think and try to brainstorm. What exactly is your current plan for your post-study life? So at the end of your bachelor's degree, what is your intention, or what are your intentions? What do you intend to do? What do you intend to become, or what do you intend to achieve within the very short term, like the first 2 to 5 years? What do you want to achieve within that short period of time? Now, if you think of it, most people by default will think about getting jobs. Most other people, or many other people, will think about going for further education. That's if they can afford it. And then a number of other people will think of creating a business. That's maybe a smaller number of people, because not everybody has the money to start a business, and not everybody has a business idea that is ready to go. But apart from all of those things, if you choose to now go for further studies, what are the benefits, or what are the benefits of you starting a business, or the benefits of you going to work? If you decide to go to work, what kind of industry do you find yourself in, and what are the job opportunities within the country at the moment? We all know, of course, that the economy of the country is not like the greatest of all economies, and sometimes finding a job can be challenging. Now, even if you do find a job in Nigeria, most times the question becomes, how much does the job pay compared to how much a scholarship abroad would pay? So when you begin to make these proper comparisons, then you start trying to align your mind, right? And start trying to focus your energy in the right place. I will share some personal experiences as we move forward. So you need to define your path, because when you define your path, you are able to focus your energy on that path that you have defined. If you choose to do jobs, if you choose to do further studies, you choose to do entrepreneurship, you choose to do additional skill acquisition, or you choose to do like what some people would say they do, like a career break. But a career break is not something we are very familiar with in Nigeria, because we can't afford the luxury of taking career breaks. But let's come to think of it. A lot of people see life as either a bridge or a flyover. And that is to say that they feel like once you get, of course, if you move on this flyover, for instance, and you go through this place, you might not be able to make a turn to this direction. But if you choose to look at life in that very narrow direction, then you feel like, well, because I want a job, then there is no need considering the opportunities for further studies. So because I want to do entrepreneurship, then there is no point considering jobs. That's like a very restricted way of thinking. It's going to limit you, and it's going to limit the abilities and the opportunities you're able to explore. But I love to think of it in this way. We can be relatively flexible, and we can combine things together. So you can start working while thinking thinking of further studies or while applying for scholarships. Or you can even be working sometimes and doing additional studies, or you can be doing additional studies and working part-time. You can also be working and running a business on the back end while the business grows to full, to its full potential. And once you're able to get to that full potential, then you can quit your job and focus on the business. But today, we are not very interested in all of the jobs, all of the entrepreneurship, the skill acquisition. Well, skill acquisition to some extent we will be touching, but we are more focused on further studies and how that you should not wait until these schools abroad start taking money from your pocket, because it can be very heavy. In my school, for instance, Robert Gordon University, the school fees is somewhere in the range of £16,000 per year. So if I was to do a PhD in the school, I'm going to pay £16,000 3 times. And this is like one of the cheapest universities you can go to in the UK in terms of tuition. It doesn't mean that the quality of education is the lowest, but for some reason, I think they designed their business model to be able to compete for international students. There are some other schools. University of Aberdeen will charge you somewhere around 20-something thousand pounds, £24,000, maybe upwards. If you go to Heriot Watt, they will charge you around £28,000. If you do the maths in the current exchange rate, £20,000 is close to 40 million. And then if you are doing £16,000, you are talking of close to around 30 to 32 million naira. So if you decided to say, well, it doesn't matter to me, there's no point applying for scholarships, I'm just going to go there, make my money, hustle my money, work, and then make money to go and further my studies. The question becomes, what's the sense in making all that money and going to pay it to a school when you have the options for scholarships, you have the options for grants, you have the options for fellowships? Again, there are people whose parents are rich, but even if your parents are rich, why do you want to take that money off their pocket if you can afford to win a scholarship? The reason I'm laying emphasis on these things is because we need to come up with that right mindset, that right desire, that right hunger and energy to pursue these scholarships, because the scholarships are there. Now, what are these things that people think about scholarships? A lot of people will tell you things that will make your spirit weak. And people will tell you things like you can't win scholarships without connections, especially if you come from places that, countries where there is a level of corruption going on in the place. Somebody will tell you, well, you can't win scholarships or merit. Just forget about it. There's no point thinking of winning scholarships or merit. They feel like, well, if your dad is not a commissioner or your dad is not a minister, then there's no point thinking of scholarships. That's the way they feel. Some people feel out there. But that's not the reality. The reality is that whether or not you have connections, if you don't win, many scholarships are going to judge you based on your merits, not based on who you know. Right? Because even if your country is corrupt, for instance, and all the scholarships within the country, let's say in quotes, are given out to people who know people, then there are scholarships that come from international organizations where you will be judged purely on merit. Everybody is going to look at your merit and the quality of the application you have submitted as a criteria for judging you. But then again, I will also emphasize that up until even as at the point when I applied for the PTDF scholarship, you could win the PTDF scholarship completely on merit. And I say this because I have applied for the scholarship. I did the application twice. The first one was not successful, and I can say, and I keep saying it, that the person who won that scholarship ahead of me that year from my state was better qualified for the scholarship than myself. It's not to say that the person was more intelligent or the person is more intelligent or has like a better degree, but the degree or the quality of the degree and CGPA was not the only criteria for judging who wins the scholarship and who does not win. There were some other considerations. For instance, they considered school awards in the university that the person had won, And in my case, I did not have so many of those awards. And again, it's not because I did not merit the awards, but because of the nature of the school I went to. They were not just very interested in issuing awards to anybody. You could be the best graduating student from your class, and there is no paper award to back that up. So when we got to the interview, the other person came with his awards, and I did not come with as many awards. And the points attached to those awards was what knocked me out mainly on that particular in that particular year. So even in Nigeria, people are winning scholarships on merit. So don't let anybody get you confused or get you weighed down by all these statements of you can't win a scholarship on merit, you can't do this, you can't do that, you need to know Mr. Paul or Mr. Or Mrs. Mrs. Mary or Mrs. whoever. You don't really need to know anybody to be able to win a scholarship. Now again, if you know the other thing that people consider is that they will tell you, well, if you don't have a first class, then just forget about scholarships. Scholarships are not for you. But that again is not true. In fact, just yesterday I read the story of one Nigerian man who finished with a third class, and he has just won a PhD scholarship to go and study in the US. It's not like it was a very simple thing for him to do. It was not a very straight line for him. And hopefully, I might be able to bring that guy to share his story on one of our Facebook Lives in the future. But what happened? He came out with the third class. He realized that the system or the requirements or the competition was tough against him, because he was going to be competing with people who had first class, who had 2-1, who had 2-2. But what did he do? He realized that there were certain skill sets, certain kind of work experiences that these scholarships were giving value to. So he took his time to gain those experiences. He took his time to build up those skills and then continued to apply. There were several failures, several rejections, but eventually he got one opportunity that sent him to Poland for his master's. Now, in Poland, he was able to do excellently well in his master's degree, which paved the way for him to go do a PhD in the United States of America on scholarship. So scholarships are not just for people who have first class. You can have a first class and it's going to accelerate your journey or make the journey easier for you. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have a first class, then you cannot win a scholarship. You can win, but your pathway to the scholarship will be different from the pathway of somebody who has a first class or who has a 2-1. We're going to go into the details just shortly. Now, the other thing is, a lot of people think that you must write IELTS compulsorily before you win a scholarship. It's not the case. It's not the situation in all cases. There are many scholarships that are attached to IELTS, TOEFL, all of these English test of English exams. But there are also scholarships that are not attached to the English language exams. There are some other scholarships where you can be considered, and then maybe after you've won the scholarship, they can now tell you to go and write the exam. Now, if you have the money to write this exam, I will encourage you to go ahead and write the exam. But if you don't have the money to write the exam, then it's not a final bus stop for you. It doesn't mean that without IELTS, you cannot apply for any scholarship. You can apply for scholarships. You can still win certain kind of scholarships. The ones that are going to be compulsory for you, we will see them in the following slides. So the reality is, with or without a first class, you can win a scholarship. And the other reality is that your skills and your experience can compensate for your, maybe if you had like a low grade or you had a low CGPA, if you build the right kind of skills and the right kind of experiences, those experiences and skills will be able to compensate for the low quality of results that you have. Then, in addition to that, if you also have publications, and I'm going to lay emphasis on publications for a reason, because many people think that you need to be a doctorate degree student before you can write papers. And many people think that you must have to be a lecturer before you can write papers. You don't need to be any of these, right, before you can have your papers written. You don't even need to have all the journal paper publications. You don't need to have all the experiences in terms of becoming a PhD holder, in terms of becoming a master's degree holder, before you can apply yourself to the realities of writing a journal paper. You can write your journal paper and get that journal paper published even as a bachelor's degree student or as a master's degree student. Now, at the level of a bachelor's, you will need some level of coaching to be able to write your publications. I keep emphasizing on this because publications are the best way of demonstrating to anybody that you have the right experience of research. Is the best way to demonstrate to any professor, to any lecturer, that you have capacity to conduct research. And everybody who goes through an engineering school, for instance, you may do a graduation project or you may do a graduation thesis. Either of these should be able to give you the platform to write a journal paper with the right guidance. You may do a literature review, maybe you might construct something, but the process that went into constructing that thing can be documented into a journal publication. If you are going to do a laboratory work, the process and the findings of your work, the methodology, the literature review, the results and findings and the discussions can be packaged into a paper. And once you have that journal paper published, it improves your chances of getting a scholarship significantly. And we're going to keep discussing that as we go through the conversation. So let's have a look at the kinds of scholarship opportunities that exist. Right? What are those scholarship options that we all have? Let's see. So there is something that's called, ideally, I love to classify scholarships into three categories. There are 4 categories actually, but I love to put them in these 3 categories because the fourth one is like a subset of one of the other 3. So there are scholarships that are funded by the universities. I call them university-funded scholarships. There are some other scholarships that are funded by governments. That's the state government, the federal government. And there are some other scholarships that are funded by institutions. When I say institution now, I don't mean educational institutions. I mean like corporations. They could be companies. They could be organizations of different kinds with different kinds of budget and different commitments and passions for education. Now, if we look at the university funding, they are mostly going to be graduate assistantships. Recently, in fact, I think yesterday there was a question on my Facebook page where somebody was asking, what are these graduate assistantships about? And I will take this opportunity to explain it. A graduate assistant abroad means that you are hired by a professor or a school to support a particular research work or a particular teaching work. And in addition to, or as a benefit to your supporting that research or teaching, the school will waive your tuition fee. So you will not be paying tuition, you will not be paying school fees. And very often, in addition to waiving your tuition fee, the school will also be giving you some amount of money as stipend. In some places, graduate assistantships or graduate assistants are considered employed by the university. So the university is going to pay you some money. You're not going to pay school fees, but in addition, as your own way of paying back to the school, you'll be supporting a particular research or you'll be supporting a particular teaching activity within the school. Now, how do this money come, the money that they use for supporting these projects, how do they come? In this part of the world, you will find that universities have lots of partnerships with companies and with governments and with other research-oriented organizations. So in the UK, for instance, there is a lot of money going into hydrogen research at the moment, renewable energy and all the rest of them that are related. And what is happening is that companies who have interest in renewable energy, they have like a budget, they dedicate that money to supporting one professor or the other to conduct a particular research that will provide answer to an industry problem. So the professor has this money, let's say £2 million, and the professor has this £2 million. That professor is too busy to be the one going to the lab to run tests. So he goes out to hire a student or goes out to hire some number of students and brings them into the institution. Their fees will be covered, and then from that money that the organization has given to the professor will be paying those students some amount of money. It's a very good kind of scholarship, and it's very good because in practically every field of life, so long as there are professors and doctors within the academia in that field, you will find graduate assistantships available either in the UK, in the US, or one of these developed countries somewhere, in Australia or any of those places. Now, I must also mention that the greatest number of graduate assistantships coming from a particular country will be from the United States of America. And this is because in the United States, you have so many universities. There are just so many universities. So even if there are two professors from each of those universities hiring graduate assistants at a particular time or a given year, the number of people coming into the US on graduate assistantships will be much. The other reason I love graduate assistantships is because it gives you you have the advantage of negotiating directly with the professor. That's the person in charge of hiring you. If you are going to do the PTDF scholarship, for instance, you really cannot have direct interaction with most of the people in charge of processing the PTDF scholarship. But on graduate assistantships, you can reach out to the professors via emails or via their LinkedIn profiles. You can write them what is called a cold email, or you can reach out to them through LinkedIn, or combine the two, or even call them on phone, because to express your interest after you've submitted your CV or prior to submitting your CV. Now, there is also some universities like KAUST. KAUST is King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. The school is in Saudi Arabia. And then there is another school called, it's located in Skolkovo in Russia, but I think the name of the school is Skoltech Institute. These two schools, every student, the schools are just for graduate studies. That's master's, PhD, postdoctorate. They don't have bachelor's degree students in the schools. But what it does is that, or what they do is that every student who comes into the school for study comes fully funded from the university. But unlike the graduate assistantship that I explained just now, you really don't have any responsibility of supporting undergraduate students or supporting undergraduate research or supporting any of those kind of research in this particular kind of arrangement. Of course, they have their big picture of what kind of research they want to do. They might also have some of these industry-funded projects, but every student in any of these two schools you see in green are fully funded. Now, let's move away from graduate assistantships. If you have more questions, you can ask them at the end of the event. But let's look at the government-funded scholarships. There is something called, in Nigeria, you have the Federal Scholarship Board that manages most of the government-funded scholarships within the country. And the most prominent of the federal scholarships is the Bilateral Educational Agreement, BEA. It can take you to Russia, it can take you to Hungary, it can take you to, I think, Egypt. Before the war, you could go to Ukraine. I think there was a time when you could go to China, to Japan, to Turkey, to Cuba, to Romania, a number of countries like that. But I think the list gets updated on a yearly basis, so you need to check up the website of the Federal Ministry of Education, subsection Federal Scholarship Board, and then you'll be able to see all of this. But apart from the government, the federal government ones, there are some state government scholarships. Now, in addition to these government scholarships that are funded by Nigeria, there are some other government scholarships that are funded by foreign governments. For instance, there is a scholarship funded by the Irish government, that's government of Ireland. There is also a scholarship funded by the Swedish Institute. This is in Sweden. There is an institute there funded by the government that gives out scholarships to students for master's degree on a yearly basis. Then there is also the Chinese government scholarship, and I think the Japanese also have a scholarship that is attached to them. There is also the Fulbright Scholarship to the United States of America. The list is very long, but any of the countries you are interested in, you can look out for their own government scholarship. Now, the government scholarships can be for citizens of the country, but some of these, the ones you have seen me list here, are all going to be open for most countries of the world, including Nigeria. So you qualify to apply for them. Apart from the government scholarship, so even if, for instance, somebody tells you that you can't win any scholarship in Nigeria, then look out for those scholarships that are funded by foreign governments. But I can also tell you that within the country, Nigeria, you can win bilateral educational agreement scholarship on merit, at least as at the time I applied for it. I didn't have to know anybody, I didn't have to talk to anybody, but I won the scholarship. This was back in 2010. When I applied for the PTDL scholarship in 20, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Can we try to give you some time to calm down, and if we can, maybe we can entertain one or two questions so that people will go to.
Yes, I wanted to do the question and answer towards the end. So I'm trying to go through the slides just to give a very good understanding of the options and how somebody can really tackle each of these options, and then I'll give room for questions.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the other ones, the institutional scholarships, now you need to also understand each of these categories of scholarships will have a particular way you approach them. For graduate assistantships, your research experience is mostly the most valuable thing. For many of these government-funded scholarships, the kind of experience they are looking for might be different. They could be looking for your volunteering experience. That's what you have done for your society or for your community, how engaged or how committed, how much of help you have offered to the society. And then as well, the institutional scholarships, some of them will also be looking for these things. For Chevening, for instance, Chevening is for master's degree, but I don't think anybody that is still in his bachelor's now will not qualify for Chevening, because you need at least 2 years work experience, cumulative experience after, not necessarily after graduation, but cumulative experience. It could be your volunteering while you're in school, your part-time work while you're in school, and then all the other work you do after graduation. But when you're applying for Chevening scholarship, they are going to ask you to write essays. Some will be leadership essays, some will be networking essays. And if you know that these are the kind of scholarships you want to apply for now, you begin to build the kind of experience that is relevant to them. So you can look back to this slide and then see all these kind of scholarships and these various options. But let's begin to get into the details of what do you require for scholarships in the real sense. The first thing is what I call PAR. That's P-A-R. You need to have the passion. You need to have the action. You need to have the resilience. You need to have the passion, you need to put in the action, and then you need to have resilience. Passion, because if you don't have the passion to win scholarships, then it's useless. Nobody can push you through to it, because there will be applications you make that may not be successful. And sometimes you see some of these applications and they are long. You need to write like 4 essays, you need to write like 3 essays, and somebody will be like, after all, why am I stressing myself doing all of this? The person goes away. That's somebody who doesn't have passion. Some other people have passion, but they never put their passion to action. That's the action becomes you take up your pen or take up your computer or your phone and register, apply for this scholarship. Some people will never do it. They keep whiling away time, and then the scholarship opportunities keep coming and keep going. Then you need resilience. Resilience in terms of if you apply for one and it doesn't work, you need to be able to come back and apply for another one, or come back another year and reapply for that particular one with an improved quality of application. After that, you need to have your international passport. It's a good thing that most of us here are based in Niger State, and I will tell you for free that Niger State is one of the easiest places to get your international passport processed. I know this because my brother used to be a doctor in Niger State before he left the country, and he did his passport there. It took him, I think, about 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 working days or thereabout to get his passport done. Meanwhile, for those of us who were in Lagos at the time, if you wanted to do your passport, even to renew your passport, you might spend somewhere close to 2 weeks or more. And if you now decide to pay the agents, you have to pay a whole lot of money to them. But in Niger State, you could do a passport. I don't know what the current price is, but as at the time, you could do your passport with about 20 something thousand naira, which is something that most students might be able to afford if they plan for it in the long term. Then you need your academic CV and you need your transcript. You also need your certificate. But your certificate is usually not a compulsory requirement for application, especially if you're applying abroad. If you're applying for graduate assistantship, you can start applying at your 500 level when you're about to graduate with your transcript. So the school will consider you for admission pending the outcome of your certificate, but with a transcript that details your performance till that point in time, maybe like till the end of your first semester 500 level, you can use it to start applying for scholarships. So eventually when you go to start the course, you have to submit your certificate, but for the sake of application, you can use your transcript to apply. Then the test of English is not a compulsory requirement, as I already mentioned. You will need to be able to write your SOP. You either call it SOP, statement of purpose, or letter of motivation, or for some advanced courses, you might need to write a research proposal. And very often people think of research proposals as something that is for PhD students, which is true. But there are schools that consider people for what is called direct PhD, especially in the UK, is very common. So where somebody has like a first class, has some publications, has evidence that this person is a good research person, the schools can give you a direct PhD where you don't have to do a separate master's degree. You go from your bachelor's straight into a PhD program. These are the options you have that you need to be aware of. Now, let's lay emphasis on something. There is something called recommendation letters, and this will have to come from your lecturers, from your HOD, or from somebody who has taught you before, from your project supervisor and all of that. Now, if you are one of those students who do not have or who does not have good relationship with his lecturers, this is the time to start building them. You're going to need those lecturers just after this your study. When you begin to go into the next phase of your study, or even when you apply for some kind of jobs, they're going to require that you come present a recommendation letter from one of these your lecturers or from two of them. So you need to build a very good relationship with them. Like they say, education is in character and in learning. Now, what are the steps for winning these international scholarships? You are going to ask your questions. I have your time today, and I hope you guys have my time as well. So you need to build your CGPA. Remember, I have emphasized that a first class is not a compulsory requirement for winning scholarships. But if you build a good CGPA, it makes your journey to a scholarship easier. It makes your journey to a scholarship easier. But if your CGPA is not so good, then what is next for you is to develop your research skills. You can also develop your data analysis skills. Research skills, data analysis skills will help anybody who is looking for a graduate assistantship anywhere, anytime abroad. Now, there are additional skills that will be course-specific, subject-specific. For instance, if you are in engineering, you might need to learn simulation softwares. If you know how to use COMSOL, or you know how to use ANSYS, or you know how to use Aspen HYSYS, any of these softwares will be relevant for you. If you're in engineering or data science as well, if you know how to do coding, some level of programming, those will also be advantageous skills towards your winning an international scholarship. You need to be intentional about these things, and you need to commit your time, your resources, your energy to it. You need to see it as a project and plan for it as a project, work on it as a project. You also need to do your volunteering experience, to gain some volunteering experiences and contribute to the development of your community. Now, this is not to say that you should go and fund a project or build a road in your community. That's too big for your budget as a student. But as a student, you can, like what is happening today, is somebody who decided to identify an opportunity and decided to organize the rest of you into this program. That is service to the community. He's not being paid money to do this. That is volunteering. And in addition to that, somebody can decide to say, well, this area of our school is so littered today, or this area of the community where I live is so littered, we can mobilize ourselves to go and clean up this place. Now, because you guys are operating as a unit of people who want scholarships abroad, you can decide to do these things as a joint venture. Come out together, go out and do this, because you know that what you are doing has benefit to you. It has additional advantage that you can use it for something in the future. And knowing that you can use this for something in the future, you then detail, or you take a very good record of what you are doing, how many people were involved, what was the extent of the work you did, what was the impact of the work you did, and what was the process that went into organizing that volunteering work. You begin to document these things, because the reason many people don't write good essays and don't write good CVs is because they don't document the things they've done. Now, if I did not mention this today, you may not have known that organizing this kind of event can be used to, improve your essay when you are applying for something like the Chevening Scholarship or the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, or any scholarship at all that talks about networking. The person or the people who organized this event today had to reach out to me. They don't know me, I don't know them, like we have not met before. But that ability to start up the conversation and bring it to this point where we are having this event is a testament to somebody's ability to build a network for a common cause, for something good, to achieve something that is of advantage to the people within your reach. And that's something that can go into your essay and improve your chances of winning certain scholarships. You see, I highlighted it in red because it's something most people do from time to time, but they don't even realize that this is of good quality or of use to them in the future. Now you understand the need, you may be able to volunteer more. In addition to that, even when you do tutorials for your classmates or you organize tutorials for junior students, this is also something called volunteering. Any job you do that helps people to improve, but you are not paid for it, is your volunteering service to humanity. It's also your contribution to your community. And these are some of the things that you will need to be able to improve your chances. Now, after you've done this, you need to start gathering your documents, because it looks like a very long time from now till the next cycle of scholarship, or from now till the time you graduate. But you will realize very quickly that time flies. And if you don't start planning to get your documents very early, you might just wake up and realize that a lack of international passport is what denied you a very fantastic opportunity that you would have won. Or you may just wake up and realize that the fact that you have not done this volunteering experience, or you have not documented your volunteering experience, is what knocks you off. In my case, for instance, you may just realize that not having awards for the things you have done may be what knocks you off. So if you have a student organization, and that student organization in your school there, you see somebody who is doing something good, and you can negotiate it with that student organization, make it a point to them that the people need evidence of their service, evidence for their service to the school. Let them give them awards of service, or awards of excellence, or awards of anything. These are parts of the documents that will help you to win scholarships in the future. And so you want to start putting all of those things together. Then, of course, you need to apply. I mentioned resilience earlier. You need to apply and continuously apply, but each time you apply, you need to improve your application. You need to also build your presentation skills. The reason this is important is because you are going to have to be interviewed. People are going to question you, to ask you for, to come present your research proposal, or to tell them why you are the best fit for that particular kind of scholarship. You need to build your presentation skill and be intentional about it. There are people who go as far as they stand before the mirror and they speak to themselves, and then they're able to judge themselves. If you listen to me very carefully, you will find that I am not saying after every speech. Like, I'm not saying then I speak one sentence, I say another I speak one sentence. You may hear me say it, but not as frequent as some people would say when they are discussing. These are things that you learn in the process of developing your presentation skills. The other one is on the aspect of building your slides. If you're asked to build a slide, you will realize that these slides that you have here, you may not have seen anything that has, like, apart from what you see here, you may not see a continuous bullet point list on my slides. And this is not like a slide I spent so much time to develop, but you have to learn to make your presentations in a way that engages the people, in a way that relates to the people, in a way that gives an idea of something beyond bullet points. Bullet point slides can be very boring. And then, of course, you need to also understand color combinations and some of these things as part of building your presentation skills. Then practice interviews and learn to interview. When I say practice interviews, I mean, if you are going for a scholarship, or even though you're not applying for any scholarship at the moment, try to look up scholarship interview questions and practice them. And also try to understand that when you go for an interview, your interviewer can decide to take control of the conversation and drive you in the direction he or she wants. But you may have the opportunities in between to take control or to regain control of that conversation and navigate the interview in the direction that's easier for you. So these are some of the things that you learn as interviewing skills. They are too deep. We may not be able to go into it completely today, but let's focus on the scholarships. Now, after all of what we have done, this is a continuation of the things that are going to help you to win scholarships. You need to improve your writing skill. You see, many of us from engineering backgrounds, we love numbers, we love calculations, we love calculus, we love algebra, we love all of these things. But even though we love all these things, most of your scholarship applications, or all your scholarship applications, will be with words. So you need to learn how to use words. You need to learn how to combine words into sentences. You need to learn how to combine sentences into a flow. And the best way to do it is what is called the STAR approach and the 5W principle. These are the two things that I know that can help anybody to write a good essay or to write even a good SOP and a good CV. The STAR approach is more relevant or more commonly used when writing SOPs and essays, but the 5W principle is more practically useful when you are writing your CV. So STAR means situation, task, action, and result. So when you think of your essay in this framework, you get something really good. Then the 5W means who, what, where, when, and why. If you think of your CV in this direction, you will get a solid CV. In order not to take so much of our time, you can refer to the YouTube channel of Academy of Scholarships and Transitions. You will find detailed explanations of these principles there. The 5W principle for how to write your CV. I think there's a video on our Facebook page that talks about the STAR approach. You can find these videos and go through them. Then the other thing is you need to build scholarship specific experience. I've tried to explain this before, but I want to show us something. You see, these scholarships that you have here, you see PTDF scholarship, for instance. PTDF scholarship values your involvement with professional bodies. So if I'm applying for PTDF scholarship, I need to have membership of professional bodies. PTDF is not going to ask me for my volunteering experience, or they're not going to ask me for what I've done for my community. They are more interested in how the research I'm going to do or how my studies will have impact on the community. So it's futuristic, not in the past. But when you write an SOP or when you apply for the MasterCard Foundation scholarship or even the Gates Cambridge scholarship, you will begin to find that there are elements of those scholarship applications that will ask for what you have done for your community. And that is why I said build scholarship-specific experiences. The differences are there, but you need to be able to identify the scholarships you're applying for. There are some that will be general requirements, but you need to identify the ones you're applying for and build the relevant skills, build the relevant experience to that particular one. Then learn to talk to alumni of scholarships. If you live in a world of isolation or you live in a world where you don't interact with people, life becomes a bit difficult. Because what somebody would have shown you the road to or told you that there is mud on this road, avoid this place and take this other place, you will find yourself going through the mud and then falling down, standing up, rising multiple times. If you're applying for the PTDF scholarship, you can speak to me and I will guide you successfully to winning that scholarship. If you're applying for Chevening scholarship, you can speak to somebody who has won the Chevening scholarship and they will guide you, give you tips, how to do this, how not to do this, and then you'll be able to win the scholarship. Learn to speak to alumni of scholarships. Don't get your information from the wrong people, those who have never won scholarships and who feel like if you win it, you'll be intimidating their own records. Speak to those who have won scholarships in the past, and they will be able to encourage you, to energize you, and to give you the guidelines that you need. The other thing you need to do is pay close attention. This is, you see, it's in a world of its own, but pay close attention to the application details of any application you are making, whether it's for a job or it's for a scholarship or it's for a grant or for anything. Pay close attention to the requirements. You see, there was this professor, or there is a professor, one Nigerian. She is a professor of computing in Canada, and she wrote a post recently. She said she advertised for something. It is a scholarship position under her, and 50% of the people who applied for that scholarship position did not comply with the requirements. 50%, I mean 50% of applicants. These are people who have finished bachelor's degree. Some of them probably have done their master's degree before, but could not pay attention to the requirements or the details of the application. What's the application looking for from me? If you go on to generate your own requirements and you generate your own demands, then you will shoot yourself on the foot and kick yourself out of the scholarship application. Now, let's look at something. At the end of talking about all these scholarships, where do you find the scholarship in the first place? Because you need to see the scholarship before you can apply. And of course, you need to apply before you can win. There are a couple of things that you can do. And this whole thing, I've done this chain or this kind of gear system to show you that all of them must be used together. You don't need to use one in isolation. You don't need to just focus on the websites of universities in isolation. You don't need to focus on scholarship blogs in isolation. And you don't need to focus on websites of scholarship awarding organizations in isolation. The reason is because if you go to the PTDF website, for instance, they will advertise PTDF scholarship there. But PTDF might not tell you how to win the scholarship. Now, somebody who runs a scholarship blog might tell you his or her own experience of how he or she won the PTDF scholarship, and you would have learned something. Then, if you also focus on the websites of the universities, you might be narrowing yourself down because you may be focusing just on your own departments. For instance, you are a civil engineer and you are focusing on the section of the website of the school that talks about civil engineering. Meanwhile, there are scholarship opportunities in the Department of Oil and Gas Engineering that's looking for the skills you already have as a civil engineer. Maybe they are trying to study geomechanics and you have good understanding of geomechanics from your civil engineering, then you qualify to apply for that scholarship. But if you focused on the website of the university, you may not see that scholarship under civil engineering because the professor who has won the funding for the scholarship is from petroleum engineering. However, if you stayed, for instance, on LinkedIn and you are actively connecting with professors and doctorate degree holders and doctorate degree students on LinkedIn, one of the persons or one of that professor's students may have posted that opportunity on LinkedIn and you would have seen it. And then you read through the requirements and you find that, oh, I qualify for this scholarship even though my background is civil engineering. So you need to learn to use these things as an integrated piece, not in separate, not in isolation. Use them together. The other place you can find scholarships are the relevant social media pages and profiles. If you have been following Academy of Scholarships and Transitions, you will find lots of scholarships being posted practically on a daily basis. In fact, I don't even share all the scholarships I come across because there are so many. I see so many scholarships on a daily basis, I can't meet up with having to share all of them practically every day. Then you can also learn to use Google. If I'm going to a country like maybe Hungary, for instance, to study, I'll go to Google and I'll say study in Hungary, because most of these countries have a website that is dedicated to studying in the country. They will say study in Hungary dot whatever, study in China dot whatever. And very often you have detailed information and sometimes the scholarships that you need. If you go to Google now and type study in Finland dot what, I think dot FI or something like that, you will find a lot of scholarship opportunities or all the scholarship options in Finland and all the schools in most of the schools in Finland. You'll find the ones that teach in English, you'll find the ones that teach in Finnish language, you'll find the ones that teach in maybe in French, in any other kind of language. You will find all of those things and you'll be able to sift through them. The other one that you must now learn how to use is the AI tools. If I look for something on Google and I'm not getting an immediate direct answer, I can go to Google Gemini and I'll ask it specific question and it will give me a specific response that is direct to the question I've asked it. On the left side of the slide, you'll find some websites that could be useful. Jobs.ac.uk is a very popular one. And remember, if you are applying for scholarships after your bachelor's degree, do not run away when you see a scholarship that is for a PhD. Go through the details, and sometimes you will find that the detail says you can apply with your bachelor's degree. The World Bank also has some scholarships that they offer. MasterCard Foundation, there is, what's this other one? Opportunities.com, a whole lot of them. I can't put all the scholarship websites here, but the one I recommend very often and very compulsorily is all of us who are on this platform today should have a LinkedIn account and should be actively connecting with professors, with associate professors, with doctors and doctorate degree holders, people who are alumni of the scholarship you intend to apply for, because they will be sharing opportunities, they will be sharing tips, and you'll be learning from the right people. Again, remember that when you travel abroad, research is very much interdisciplinary. And that is why I gave that example of somebody coming from civil engineering and finding a scholarship in petroleum engineering. In fact, one of my colleagues in my place comes from a background of disaster management, and today he's doing his PhD in the Faculty of Engineering. You can have interdisciplinary studies, interdisciplinary research that are actually looking for your skills and your knowledge and not the title on your certificate. So the title on your certificate could be petroleum engineer, and what you are studying is something related to renewable energy, because you have the skills that the research is looking for. Now, let's give a typical example of how to use this social media. I have emphasized here that you can use social media platforms, and I gave example of LinkedIn and others. Now, this slide you are seeing is basically built from LinkedIn, or is built around LinkedIn. Now, if you are going to use any of these social media platforms profitably and not to while away your time with comedians and with musicians and with whoever they are, then you must learn to do what is called a profile optimization. And profile optimization, I tell people, is not your profile picture. Profile optimization is setting your profile up in such a way that anybody who comes to that profile can identify who you are very easily. The person can say what your experience is, what you can do for him, and what you cannot do for him, the area that he should hire you into, the area he shouldn't hire you into. That is what your profile should be. If you have not seen an optimized profile before, you can refer to my LinkedIn profile and learn some lessons from there. Now, when you start using LinkedIn, you don't need to send random connection requests all the time. You can randomly connect with people at your level, people below your level, but when it begins to go to people above your level, the professors who have the scholarships, I call them senior professionals because they are either managing the opportunities you are interested in, or they themselves own those opportunities. If you begin to connect with those ones, you want to do personalized invites. And because LinkedIn has restricted the number of personalized invites you can send per month, what I try to teach people these days is to take advantage of other people's posts through your comments on their post. And that is what is called constructive commenting. If you come to the post of somebody who is a professor, you can almost be assured that many people within his network are going to be professors as well, or people aspiring to become professors. So when that professor writes a post, and you come to the comment section of that post and write a constructive comment, most of those other professors within his network will see that comment. And that is you building up your profile, building up your reputation, and increasing your chances of being accepted into the network of those people. Then again, you need to move from just connecting with people to learning to create your own content. Stop being a consumer of content forever. At some point, create the kind of content that will give any professor or any hiring manager the idea that you qualify for this particular kind of job. I say this from experience because very often when you are in the process of getting some kind of jobs, they will go to your LinkedIn profile to view it. It has happened to me. In fact, I'm even in the process of one at the moment, where all of a sudden you notice that people from a particular company are viewing your profile, and then before you know it, you get an email or get a call or a text message saying, are you available for this kind of role or for this kind of job? Build up your profile, write things about the passion you have, about the area of study that you're interested in. Write your findings, write your learnings, what you are learning in school. You can create content around it, what you have done in school, your research experiences or your teaching experiences. Write about it. This event that is holding today, go to LinkedIn, write something about it, and all of this will be building your reputation. If you write about organizing or attending a scholarship webinar or a scholarship workshop, most of the people will begin to know that this person is interested in getting a scholarship. So you're building up your profile and building up your reputation. Do this not just on LinkedIn but across other social media platforms. Connect with the professors. Now, with this, what I want to do, this will be my final slide, and then we open the floor for questions. Now, if we talk about all of these things and you don't go into actions, then we would have wasted our time. If you don't ever apply for scholarships, then this event was useless to you, except of course if you go and tell somebody else what you have learned today and then the person makes use of it. But if you want to make things happen, you need to put things in action. You know that physics law that's, a body remains at rest until you give it some push to overcome that inertia that it has. If you don't put action to practice, or if you don't put knowledge to action and to practice, you will remain where you are. You will not win any scholarship. But today, we went through a learning phase, and then the learning phase can continue. It's not everything that we can teach in one day. I have not taught you how to write CVs, for instance. I have not done any demonstration of how to write an SOP. I've only mentioned the strategies you need to write them. I've mentioned the kind of ideologies behind writing a very good one, and I've also told you that you need one. But it is now left for you to try to say, well, what are the additional resources that are available, or what else can we do to be able to learn how to write these things? And that's why I mentioned that there is a video on my YouTube channel that talks about how to use that 5W principle to get a very good CV. But if you don't take the action of going to look up that video and trying to watch it or trying to practice it, it must not be from my channel. You can learn it from any other channel, for instance. But if you don't put that learning or this message into actions, then you will end up remaining where you are. But the point of today is, you know what the opportunities are. You know how massive these opportunities are, and you want to go into actions. And Woody Allen would say that 80% of success is in showing up. If you don't show up, you will not win anything. If you don't show the people that you can and that you are hungry for something, nobody is going to give it to you. And how do you show the people that you are interested in scholarships or in jobs? You want to show that interest by applying. You want to show that interest through the kind of posts you create on LinkedIn, through the kind of posts you create on social media, through the kind of people you engage and the kind of questions you ask people. You need to put your learning into action. If you keep learning, you just remain at the base of this impact pyramid. But I want you to show up. And even the Bible as well supports that you should show up. When the Bible talks about asking and it shall be given unto you, seeking and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you, is telling you to take actions. You don't sit down and believe that everything is going to fall on your plate or into your plate. You need to put some work into the things that you desire. And remember, If you don't show up, the world is so distracted that even the people who know you will begin to forget you if you don't
So
show up
now Bible
consistently
is different.
before them. So now let's have a look at our questions and answers. Before that, just remember that while you put in all the effort, you need to have the backing of God. The physical is controlled by the spiritual, but God has given us the right to take actions. We put our trust in Him because it's not of our will and it's not of our power. It's by God's grace that enables us to achieve the things that we achieve. So let's have a touch on questions and let's have a touch of answers to those questions. Don't go back from this place with any question in your mind. Be as much as possible
Hmm?
open with your
Let me
questions. And this is me just calling it a finish on the presentation slides. I will stop sharing the screens now so that we can take the questions and answers. Any questions? Back to you, the moderator.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
I think someone is raising up his hand already. Mr. Adegoke.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for putting over this seminar. It's quite very insightful, and I learned a lot. Although I joined very late, and I expect that this type of seminar used to charge at least a fee for somebody to actually gain access to all this valuable information. And I believe you, Mr. Chukwemeka, have been very magnanimous and very very open-hearted, sharing this valuable information. But my question is, I noticed that on one of the website that you share with us, that's job.ac.uk.
Yep.
Most of these, I actually mailed some professor on some offer, and I got feedback. I'm very happy with that. Although I didn't get it because it's quite competitive,
Yeah.
they replied me. But unlike most of the US school that actually asks that their requirement is much compared to UK, I still see that UK schools are more competitive. Though I still don't relent, I still keep trying, selecting offer, mailing and sending application for now. And I believe listening to type of your seminar will also, aid some of, my colleagues like me that's applying for scholarship. So my question is, will you encourage us that we should just keep applying more and more and more until we get it, or we should just diversify? If you check UK, you can check World Bank, you can check US. But just like I said, most UK actually charge application fee, unlike most UK school doesn't. So that's my question. That you encourage an applicant to keep searching, keep searching, keep searching.
Okay. So this is what I do. When I when I was finishing my bachelor's in Russia, we did even my I think around the time, yes, at the end of my bachelor's and while I was doing my master's, we had like a team of myself and some other persons who were friends. I don't know if any of them is on this live call today, but quite a number of them. So we were applying for schools in. I remember I applied to the US, I applied to Australia, I applied to Canada, I applied to the UK. But at the time, many of them were coming back with, some of them came back with admissions, some came back with saying that they don't have scholarships at the moment and all of that. But I learned some lessons from it that I want to share with you. One is if you choose to apply to Canada and to the US, then you need to approach your application differently. You need to first speak to those professors, and then when the professor has given you, or the doctor or the associate professor, when the person has given you the green light to say that yes, I have funding and I have seen your profile, I believe you can be a good candidate or a competitive candidate for this particular position, then you go ahead to make the payment of application fee. Otherwise, the application fees can be expensive. You'll find some schools in the US that will charge you maybe somewhere around $100 or $75 just for application processing fee. And if you do that for 10 schools, you know how much it is. And then you compare that with how much somebody is making back at home, it might be challenging. For me at the time, it was relatively easy. The scholarship, I was on a scholarship that was paying like $500 a month or $550 cumulatively a month, so I could afford to pay, a number of schools like that. But when you also apply for these scholarships, in my case at that time, in retrospect, I feel like one of the reasons why I did not get a scholarship that time was because I was very, very interested in drilling engineering. I don't know if there is any oil and gas person here, but I wanted to further my studies in well engineering. I was looking at well bore instability and drilling fluids at the time. But at that point, well engineering and drilling fluids engineering, or mud engineering as it's called, it was no longer getting funding sufficiently from institutions. At the point, most of the oil and gas funding were going into reservoir engineering, or going into enhanced oil production, or going into shale oil production. But here was me wanting to be in drilling and wanting to be in well engineering. So it's a case of, there are times when you realize that your field does not have as many scholarship opportunities as you may be interested in. And because of that, the competition becomes very tight. What you can do is look at another field where your current knowledge and skills will be applicable, right? I could wake up now and decide to do a PhD in hydrogen production or hydrogen manufacturing or anything renewable energy or manufacturing. And in fact, anybody who has gone through engineering school can do a course in renewable energy. And the reason is simple, because there is no bachelor's degree in hydrogen production, for instance. So the hydrogen economy is going to rely on the current engineers. And if you go to that jobs.ac.uk, you will find that many of the scholarships are inclining towards those directions. The way I